Yo, what's good? Welcome to Counter Currents. This is your host, Petey Steele.
And your co-host, Elena Torres. We're here today. I'm coming to you with this weird angle from my iPad because my internet went out an hour ago. So this is where we are. But today we have a guest. Let me tell you something about this guest. I had heard about this guest for a long time, but I only met him recently. And you know, you meet a lot of people in comedy, especially people who book you on a show, and like their energy is just kind of like you're lucky to be here, and they're not that enthusiastic, you know. And this next guy was one of the more enthusiastic people I met. Not only super funny, but super appreciative of everybody being funny on his show. So we're so excited to have him on. Please welcome Todd Fleming.
What's up? What's up? Thank you guys for having me, man. And that means a lot, Elena. I appreciate it.
It's true. It's true. You know, you don't meet a lot of people in comedy who are, you know, just sort of like happy to be there. And it's a passion for everybody. You know what I mean? Which is the funny thing is like, you don't meet a lot of comics who seem excited to do comedy.
Isn't that so weird?
Yeah, it is. It is. I think so many people are just so jaded. Like they just get so like,
right.
And it's like, we're doing something that we like to do. Like, I don't, you know, maybe if I took it more seriously, then I'd be better. But, but I'm just really like, oh man, I'm out the house, whatever. It's cool. So,
yeah. So did you just start comedy to get out the house? I mean, like,
I mean, it's a funny story. So I was at a show and, it was one of Dave Schofi's shows back in the day.
Yeah. Wow.
I was just there and my buddy went up to Dave and he was like, man, my boy could do this. Right. And I was just like, whoa, why are you saying that? Why are you saying that? And he was like, nah, man. He was like, and Dave was like, well, it's kind of tough. And, you know, it's not as easy. And he was like, if you want a shot, come back next Wednesday and I'll put you up. And he put me up and I did well. And then I just started going from there.
Was that Sonoma's?
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew it. Columbia, Maryland.
Yeah.
So. Is that where you're
still there?
Yeah, that's where I'm from, and that's where I am now. Like I've bounced around a couple of places, but I'm back here now. So I don't have any complaints. You know.
Wow. And Sonoma's still there?
Sonoma's is still there. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah. I just
saw good food, but you know, other than that, I didn't think they had like any other stream of revenue.
I don't know how they do it, but somehow they do it.
Yeah.
I think it might be like just a front for the mob. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on.
I've thought that because it's in that big shopping mall and there's like nobody else patronizing any of the other stores, you know?
Yeah. It's an interesting spot.
And how long have you been doing comedy now?
I want to say this is year 10, actually.
Year 10.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it's weird. I mean, I count last year, even though I wasn't really doing comedy last year.
Right.
I know a lot of people are like, I'm not even counting last year, but you know, yeah.
I say it both ways. I say like this much counting the pandemic, this much not counting the pandemic.
Yeah.
And over 10 years, especially like you're a producer now too. If somebody young who just started doing comedy asked you, like, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned in that time? Because 10 years is no joke. What do you think it is?
The most valuable lesson? I would say, and it honestly kind of goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, like, don't burn bridges. I mean, I do my best to stay out of the drama because there's all this like comedy drama all the time. And people are like, oh, haven't you heard about such and such? I'm like, no, I haven't heard about that. Like, you know, and if I do hear about it, I don't really care. So, I mean, if I tried to like be involved in which comedians didn't like each other and all of that kind of stuff, it would just be too much. So I just try to go in, do my thing, be nice to people, and then hope that, you know, they appreciate it and they can, you know, we can give each other opportunities. And because I feel like there's enough to eat. Like there's enough shows now and there's enough venues and promoters and producers where it's like, you don't really have to dog everybody to get on. You can just kind of get on your own. So that would be my, I think, advice to a young comic coming through.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice too, because I've seen it a lot of times. There's also, you might be not that cool to someone that you don't think is funny, and you've been doing it 10 years. I haven't been doing it as long as you, but even in the amount of time I've been doing comedy, I've noticed like people who were not funny.
Yes.
People who were not funny, and where you're like, why are you here?
Yeah.
And then suddenly they get really funny.
Yes, that's happened to me several times where I'm like, oh, one of us has been working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is not an example of that, but because this guy was always funny. But the last time I did a show in DC with that had my buddy Dylan Meyer on it, I was just looking at him and I was going, holy, like I should have quit. Like, I don't like you're killing now, so but yeah, there have been people that I've seen who I'm like, why is this person even doing it? And then they're just grinding every night, and then they get to where they want to go. So I agree. Yeah.
And then how have you noticed the scene so you're in Columbia, but you do I'm assuming you do a lot of rooms in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Also, and how's that scene done with COVID?
Most people, most of the places weren't really doing live shows for a while. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I get out to open mics and stuff less than most people do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of just try my stuff out whenever I get booked. And mm-hmm. I'll do like old material, and then I'll try to put one or two new things into it every time. Mm-hmm. And so that way it's like I have stuff that I know people are gonna like, and then I have stuff that I'm not sure, but so
all with the new.
Yeah, I like that. That's my approach to it. I mean, some people, they come out and they just do all new stuff sometimes. I don't really have that kind of I don't like that. But,
yeah, that's what Dion Cole was saying on some interview I watched earlier today, how he always does old with new. And that made me feel a little bit better about my approach, because that's kind of my approach too. Yeah. But sometimes I feel I lean on that too much, and I don't really explore the new as much as I need to do and take the risks.
Yeah, I hear you.
I feel like you have to be in a certain place to do that. I did that for the very first time, where I did a set of all new stuff, or at least for the first time in a long time, mm-hmm. probably a couple months ago, where I did a full set of new.
Yeah.
But I was in a place where like I'd done too many old sets in a row,
mm-hmm.
and you have to really want it. And I was like ready for the silence. I also did it in a place, in a show, where I knew it, like it was okay. Because that's the other thing, right? Is like you can do all new stuff, and then the booker will be like, well, that's a bad comedian.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's quite a risk when you do it like that,
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like it's a lot of things have to come into play, but I feel like most comics do it that way.
Yeah.
Most comics throw in the new jokes in between old jokes.
Yeah.
Well, because it becomes a thing at some places. The one thing that's hard, it's not like a weightlifting or an exercise regimen, in that, you can say, all right, today's arm day, today's chest day, today's leg day, or whatever. You can say, all right, tonight's like new night, or maybe it's old and new, or maybe it's like we're spinning the classics. But then you got to get there and read the room, and then your whole fucking game plan might fly right out the window, you know?
That's right.
It's hard to keep that consistent.
Yeah.
I said last night I was going to do all new, and then I got there and there's like 8 people, and I was like, all right, this is perfect for new, but then they weren't biting the new, and I'm like, oh shit, I got another like 10 minutes up here, so I got to do some stuff to kind of win them back, and then maybe try some new. And then I ended up just doing crowd work, one classic, and I walked one table.
Did you?
I did. It was actually a very, it was a tough thing though, because it was the train joke. Okay. Anybody who knows me knows that's usually my closer. And this group that was there knew somebody that, I don't know when or where, and there was no way I would have known, but they took their own life at some point in time. And they walked out and told the booker, they're like, we didn't appreciate that joke.
Oh, really? You got a full on, we're offended by like trigger warning material thing.
Yeah.
Happened.
But the guy was cool. He was like, he told the booker, like, hey, he didn't know, so don't fault the comedian or anything. And then I felt like bad. Like if he'd been like, oh yeah, like call his job, cancel him, do this. I'd have been like, oh, fuck that guy. But now I was like, all right, I get it. You're allowed to have your fucking feelings, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, but there is no way I would have known. And I was like, man, I pray for that man's pain and his peace.
Yeah.
It was weird because I've never felt quite like that after I offended someone for a joke before,
Yeah.
where I like actually could sympathize a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
My girlfriend was there. She's like, oh my God, I didn't know you had feelings.
I actually didn't either, Petey. I had.
Yeah, you're like, with everybody except you, babe. Todd, what do you think about offending people with your jokes? I mean, not your jokes in particular, but I mean, as a comedian.
Like, it bothers me that people are so easily offended, but then again, like I've heard Petey, whenever Petey tells that joke, I'm cracking up. But then again, and I've had people in my life who have been friends who have gone out that way, not necessarily with a train, but you know what I mean? But who have taken their own life. So it's not like it doesn't offend me,
right?
But if it offends somebody, then, but I don't even think you can approach comedy that way. Like, I think you just try to say the stuff that's funny to you,
right,
and the stuff that you think is going to be funny to a lot of other people. And then just, I mean, you're going to lose some. I mean, every joke is not going to hit with everybody, but I've seen that joke kill so many places where it's just like, well, if you lose one table, it's like,
sometimes you got to break an egg to make an omelet,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've been making omelets off that joint for 8 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I touch on a little bit of like political stuff every now and then, like, you know what I mean? I'll get some pushback, but never like, usually I get the old woman who comes up to me at the end of the show and goes, I just thought it was so nice how you didn't have to curse and you didn't have to talk about your genitals the whole time. And I'm like, oh, thank you. But then I'm like, oh my God, am I like the hacky, like, I mean, maybe if I could get some corporate gigs, I'd be like, cool. But
yeah.
So I don't think I'm necessarily a quote unquote offensive comedian, but it's just not my style. But
right.
Do I have the ability to go there? I do, but it's just not kind of the way that I approach it. But to me, it's like, hey, everybody's gonna like different stuff.
Yeah.
And you just got to write your stuff and do your thing, and let the chips fall where they may. So.
And it's funny you say that, because I think it's a little bit with comics, like the grass is always greener. Like you're talking about that old lady coming up to you. And like, I've always, when I started comedy, I really, really wanted to be a clean comic. Like really, I really wanted to, because I just think it's so classy to be a clean comic, and like that you can find just like regular everyday stuff that's funny. And I figured out within like 3 weeks of doing comedy that's just not part of my story. Yeah. And I'll like try to write that way for a little bit, and it's just not who I am as an artist. And sometimes I'm like, I wish the old lady would come up. The old ladies never come up to me and say that. I do have ladies come up to me after and like tell me about their sex lives, and I'm like, that wasn't what I was going for, but thank you. I will have like frustrated housewives come up to me and be like, I'm so glad you talked about that.
But you know what's great too? Like, I'll have an old lady or somebody that I think is going to hate what I'm about to do come up to me after the joint and be like, yo, that was amazing. Like, I really appreciated that. And the other people, they're cool with it, but they're like, whatever. Pats on the back. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
Yeah. Like the room that you guys did, my spot here in Columbia, like.
Great room.
Yeah. Thank you. There's a lady who her kids used to be like my summer campers, right? It was like 3 boys, right? So one of them, it was his 18th birthday. So she's like, hey, I was wondering what I was going to do for, my son and I think I'm gonna bring him to the comedy show, right? The 18-year-old. So I'm like, all right. I'm like, I gotta warn you, like, you know, the show is R-rated, you know what I mean? And she's like, oh, I'm not worried about that. Kids nowadays hear everything, right? So I get to the show. She's not only there with him, but she's there with like the 15-year-old and like the 13-year-old too. And like her parents and like her husband. And I'm like, so there's like an 8-top sitting right next to the stage. And I'm like, oh boy. And they heard some of the most outlandish stuff the whole night. They were dying laughing. They loved it. She was like, take pictures with Mr. Todd. You know what I mean? But it was just like, I thought they might be offended, and they just had a ball. So, and I told him, I was like, the dinner table is going to be a little weird probably tomorrow, but
yeah.
But whatever. Like, she was like, we'll be back. You know, I was like, bet. So yeah, you don't ever really know, you know.
It's true. It's true. Like I remember I was featuring. I was featuring once, and I got a text from my husband being like, oh, my boss just told me that he was at your show. My husband's boss. And I thought to myself, I was like, I think I'm good, because I don't think I told like that many of like the hard ones. And so I got off stage, like when the show was done, I got off stage and I went to go see him, and he was like, I've done cocaine off toilet seats too. And I was like,
you were like, yes.
I was like, okay, well, I'm glad that went over well, because that was really touch and go there, and I totally forgot that I did that joke. But yeah. When I was teaching in Baltimore City, and the principal of my school was at a show that I was about to start, and she was eating dinner with like another, like, you know, high up person on the school board or something. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Right. And they were just eating dinner, and they actually ended up leaving before the show started. And I was like, thank God. Cause I was like, this is my current boss. You know what I mean? But and I bombed that night. It was awful. That's a story for another time though. Yeah, I was a little nervous. I was like, oh man, I don't know. That's lucky. So wait, you're a school teacher?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. What do you teach?
I teach PE. I'm a PE teacher. I got
hey.
Blow
I get
the
to
whistle.
wear the shorts and the polos every day. So
right. Do they still do that? I remember, because I went to the American school in Mexico City for 1 year. And I remember there's this thing where you have to like run the mile, and there's like a bunch of stuff that you have to do. It's some like PE test. Do they still do that?
Yeah. So that's the presidential fitness test. It's no longer a requirement, but it's optional. So some teachers do it, some teachers don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hated that.
Did Trump being elected kind of bury the presidential fitness test? Like, take a fucking third look, guy, you know?
That might have been it. Like, that might have been the thing that buried the hatchet. But yeah. Like, I don't do it. I don't make kids do it, but some people are very traditional and they want to do it. So I'm like, whatever.
Do you use a whistle to get your point across?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes I do. Yeah.
I feel like that's a big part of being a PE teacher, is being able to express yourself via whistle.
Todd, I bet you look hot with a whistle.
Oh man, I'm one of the hottest whistle users.
Right.
Dude, you probably wear like those short, like old Porky's gym shorts or whatever.
Yeah, I wear the bike
V-neck joint
bike brand.
Yeah. You look like one of the guys in the Commodores video from '82. Like lady.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I had I played football in high school and stuff. I played a couple of sports, and I just think about the stuff that like the coaches would do that they would never be allowed to do like in 2021. Like I specifically remember my coach used to wear those tight bike shorts, you know?
Yeah.
And this one practice, one of my teammates kept jumping off sides. And the coach said, such and such, for the rest of practice, you're my bitch. And he literally made him put his hand in his back pocket and follow him around for like 15 minutes with his hand on the coach's butt. And I was like, gee, like you'd be on the news right now if you did that. Like,
oh my God, that guy would be in jail now.
Yeah.
If you did that.
And
yeah,
that was
I mean,
just,
I
like,
think
normal
back
stuff.
of it too, like high school football. I remember one that we were doing 2-a-days. And there was this one kid that was like 350 pounds, you know, the slowest guy, lagging and everything. And I remember like the coach would pull the whistle, say, everybody get out the locker room. We're doing mountain climbers or whatever. There's going to be fucking 2 more mountain climbers for every kid that's left in that locker room or whatever. And then he's like, and if that fat kid's in there, you're all doing 50.
Yeah.
Wow.
And nowadays, forget it. On so many levels, that would be like hazing, fat shaming, you know, body negativity. I've never phrased it like that, but whatever. Maybe chance of dying of heat stroke. Who the fuck?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They did not care. They would tell us like water's for wimps and, you know, sissies, and we were like, what? It's 97 degrees out here. But they didn't care. They didn't care.
Yeah, but they were, I feel like when we were growing, I was so glad I didn't grow up in the US, because whenever I would come here and like what I would see with like the sports culture in the US, like just for our generation sort of growing up, I mean, if you weren't good at sports in America, like you were worthless, which I always thought was so fun. Like I remember that presidential fitness test in PE was like super traumatizing for me because I was horribly unathletic growing up, especially from like 5th grade to about 9th grade. I was also like overweight. Like puberty hit me really hard. That's why I'm funny. And so I just had like, you know, I was always like last in the line. And that test, I remember like the PE teachers would just push. I'd be like, I can't run this mile. Like, just let me walk it. Like, I just couldn't do it. And they just didn't give a fuck. It was like being inclusive or like, we appreciate your abilities. It was just like, you suck.
Yeah.
If you can't climb this rope, like life is not going to work out for you.
If you can't climb that rope.
If you can't climb that fucking rope. And like,
I'll be honest, I still have like that internal masculinity about me when I deal with people. I mean, I'm shedding layers of it or whatever as I get older. But sometimes, you know, I'll see some comic bombing like 15 mics in a row. And I'm like, you know, you would never try to lace up your shoes at the Rucker more than one time if you perform as badly at fucking basketball as you do at comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very, very high pressure here. I'm so glad I didn't have to do. I feel like I would be a better comic now because I would have probably gotten bullied and stuff. But like, I stopped going to PE at some point in high school. I just didn't go.
Yeah.
And my school was kind of like, well, we have to pass her, and it's just PE.
Yeah.
But I just stopped going. And you can't do that now. Don't they have to do PE for like 6 hours at school here?
They do?
Something like that.
It's like a couple hours a week. I should know this, right? But
how many classes you teach a day, Todd? Is it like 1 or 2?
No, I have like 7. Sorry. I have a lot of classes every day. Like so I'm at the most overcrowded school in Prince George's County. So we have like just a ton of students. Like there's teachers who teach like in book closets and like in the hallway. Like it's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'd have like classes like boom, 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 like all day. But I'm done by like 2:30. So I'm happy about that.
That's nice.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah.
That's nice. Wow, that's crazy about that the school is so crowded. It's just the area.
Yeah.
The
that
public
area.
School thing.
Yeah. And there's like 4 schools that are like right within like a 2 or 3 block radius. And they're all, I mean, ours is the most crowded, but they all have a ton of kids. So it's wild, but the kids are awesome. Their parents are great. So I really can't complain. This was my first year there. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I? I need to just tap this switch real quick because my battery's dying. But I'll be
okay. Tap it.
Okay.
Yeah, PE. What a thing that was. What an ordeal.
I'm
and in
so
elementary school, it was the most fun class, but we only had it twice a week.
Yeah.
I hated PE. Always.
Really?
Because
even when you were young?
I was so bad at it. And like with the rope, I mean, like I couldn't.
Dodgeball?
No, none of that. Like the rope. I was always eliminated in dodgeball really fast. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that Friends episode where they play football.
I never
it's
watched
like a Thanksgiving.
Friends.
It's a Thanksgiving episode. Basically, like in that episode, they tell Rachel, Jennifer Aniston's character, to just go long every play. That is like the story of my life of sports growing up. Just Elena, just go long. Just get out of here. Like last to be picked. Just go over there and play defense. That's why I just stopped going. And like the PE teachers were kind of like, "That's cool."
Well, what's funny? It's weird because like my mom wasn't athletic, so she would always tell us like, "Oh, I used to always get picked last," and they probably told her to go long, And the rest of us, like, we were all athletic, so we would all laugh at her. Like me and my dad were like, "We got picked first, like all the time." And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't hit a baseball," like she, But so all of my athletic ability came from
your dad. What sports did you play growing up?
So as a kid, I played baseball and basketball and football. And then like high school, I played football, baseball, ran track, and got some state championship titles and stuff like that from a couple of those sports. So I was actually I had a pretty good experience playing sports. And learned a lot.
So you like your job, basically. It's
that's
great.
Yeah. So
that's great.
Would you give it up for comedy if you like,
Oh yeah.
Ooh, good question.
Okay. Oh, in a heartbeat. Would? Yeah. So I never thought I was going to be a teacher. It just kind of like happened.
Right.
When I graduated from college, I came out and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I started substitute teaching, and then people were like, "You're really good at that." And then I just was like, "Well, I guess I'll do this." So it's kind of the story of my life. I don't really plan too well.
Is that how comedy happened? You were just kind of...
I was just there.
Yeah.
I mean, like I had always been like the class clown and everything.
Right.
And I could always do voices and different stuff like that. So, people would always be like, "Man, you should be a comedian. You should be a comedian." And I knew like if I never did it, I would always regret it. So I was like, I can't do that. So I gave it a whirl and it's gone pretty good. But yeah. But
comedy's funny like that. Like I remember people would always say that. People have been saying that to me forever. But I was like, how do you even start doing? And people be like, you should do stand-up. And I was an actress forever. And I was like, how do you even start doing stand-up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of a hard thing. It's like, even if you go to an open mic, you're kind of like, what do I do with this?
Is there a guy I talk to? Like,
I right. And you see it a lot. I feel like this is something I love watching new comics just like tell the story that their friends think is so funny. That like the one time that all their friends were cracking up so hard and then they tell it at the mic and it eats shit. I think that's one of my passions in life. Is like watching that disappointment.
Yeah.
And it's always some dude and all his friends came to the show because it's a bringer spot.
Yeah.
And he's so excited. He's like, this story crushes.
Yeah.
At the cabin.
All his friends are like, watch this motherfucker fuck this up now.
Yeah. Oh, man,
this is going to be so awesome.
Funny. He told the story the other day with the stripper. So funny. And it just eats it. It's like, it really makes me happy.
Yeah. That happened to me in College Park. I was doing a show and there was, I met these like 3 young guys outside and the friends were like, "Yo, our boy is." They didn't know I was a comic, by the way. So I'm just standing like talking to these guys, right? And they're like, "Our boy is so funny," and oh my god, like he's gonna da 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 da. And then the guy was up on stage and he was like trying to do his thing, and his friends were like cracking up, but it was clearly like an inside joke, and his friends were like, oh, and like hardly anybody else was really feeling it. And the guy, you could tell he felt like he was killing. And then like he came off, and then I was the person who was supposed to like close the show out as they like tabulated votes. It was a contest or something. And I went up, and I had like a really good set. And I remember like the looks on his friends' faces. They were like, it was so like, because they were like, oh, because they just knew like their friend was the funniest.
Right. They were like, oh, this is what he was supposed to be doing.
Right. Right. And I was like, oh, nah, man, your friend was good, man, you know. And they were just like, thanks, man. But I had never really saw him again. But
yeah, well, you never see them again. That's what I love about it. Like usually those guys never come back.
Right. Yeah.
Because they're just like, oh, you know what? I'm like a comedian. Whenever I tell these stories with my buddies, and then it doesn't go that way, and the ego.
Yeah.
Because the ego is and the way the ego gets hit, I love it.
You know,
I don't love new comics who are like, where it's like, oh, there's something there and they're going to be around for a while. That's always like, great, another one.
Yeah.
But no, it's the ones who try it and like the disappointment that comes, man.
That fear is what stopped me from doing that for years. Because I toyed with the idea in my mind, like I could be a comic, but then I'd kind of be like, nah, there's definitely a difference between being like street funny and stage funny.
Yeah.
And right. Yeah, I used to think that too.
Give myself credit to where there is some overlap. It's just not a perfect overlap, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I always treated it kind of the same way you were all talking about, insofar as like you do this open mic and you're kind of like, all right, that's great, but is this a conduit to like the improv? No, the fuck it's not. There's no way like this leads anywhere. This is out like nowhere. Then you find out it's actually a bigger building block than you think, you know, like someone sees it, knows another room, and before you know it, you're meeting a couple bookers, and then pow.
Yeah.
It's weird like that, you know. It's not like a direct linear path in this game.
Right.
Unlike a lot of these other things that are out there.
Yeah. Like almost every gig I've ever gotten has been while I was at another one. You know what I mean? Or like, or from somebody who was at one who was like, yo, man, you want to come do my show? Oh, yeah. Oh. And so like when I would go through phases where I wasn't really into it, and I was just like doing life and like, I don't feel like going out. And that's when like I wasn't getting gigs. And then as soon as I would pop back up and start doing gigs, and people would be like, hey man, you want to do my thing on Thursday? Hey, come do my thing on Monday. And it's just like a snowball effect. But that's why you gotta just keep doing it.
We're seeing a lot more of that now that it's back open again, and there's not quite as many people doing it, but there's enough where everybody's got their eyes and ears open, and they're looking to build the next show they can make a buck off of. So if you're out there and you're like, you know, halfway decent, you get more bookings.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I love most about the art form probably is that it's like so organic that way, you know, whereas like with acting, there's so many gatekeepers. There's so many, like it's hard in acting to just get the opportunity to do acting. You know what I mean? And in comedy, it's just sort of like, if you're good, you don't need like you don't need some agent to get you in the door. You don't need research. You don't need to have like, you just can go to open mics and like from there get shows, and just by doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Create a network instead of sitting around and waiting for people to call you. That's actually probably one of the things I love most about it. And one of the things actually, like when my first real mic that I ever did in DC, I got off stage and I was angry. I got off stage because I was like, I should have been doing this the whole fucking time.
Oh wow.
I was like, because I knew, and I'd worked enough in entertainment where I was like, it's gonna take a really long time and be a fucking grind. I'm gonna have to do all the shit I just did all over again when I should have just done this.
Yeah.
No, really. And it's interesting, Elena, you bring that up because I hadn't really considered that in terms of acting. I mean, I hear about these gatekeepers and such. And then earlier today, I was reading this new book. I'm like broadening my mind. It's a thing actually about like sexual assault and accountability. It's called Citadels of Pride. Very good. Okay. It's by this U of Chicago law professor. But what she's talking about in some of the chapters is how, like, in the entertainment industry, and she covers like acting, she touches a little upon comedy, but then she talks about like films and everything, and how there's this progression of gatekeepers that make it really difficult the higher up you go in certain things where like competencies are demanded, so that like, predatory people or bad actors can get away with shit a lot more, because they're like, unlike comedy where you have like all these realizable roles where a lot of people can learn how to do act outs, or a lot of people can learn how to do like, just a mediocre job, where it can, contrast it with an actor where you actually have to have really good, proficient, trained people. And then you go even higher up into the echelons of like ballet or like classical or opera. It's like, try to find some guy to replace the scumbag who can sing that wild arietta. If you don't know them exact notes, your ass is history, Jack. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how virtuous you are. The only thing counts in this life, sign on the line that's dotted. So it kind of enables that sort of fuckery to persist, as you go up different dominance hierarchies. It's really interesting. I hadn't really considered.
Really? Do you think acting's above comedy? Because let me tell you something, having done acting for as long as I have, I mean, I still do it, but for as long as I did, is people who can't act get jobs 50% of the time or more. And in comedy, that doesn't happen. That's another thing I love in the comparison of the two, is like, you can't be somebody's kid and headline.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't fake headlining. Like, you can be somebody's kid, or you can suck a dick and you can star in a movie. No problem. Happens all the time. Like, it's really easy. It's really, acting, one, is not that hard. And it's hard to do, like, to play the Joker when you're Joaquin Phoenix, but like basic acting, most roles that are out there, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
And it's so padded for you. Like, the director's there to do it as many times as you want to get it right. Everybody's there to help you get it right. And in comedy, it's like, you don't get it right, that's on you.
No, I agree with that. And I have said that in the past, that I think, like comics to comedic actors are kind of like what cabinet makers are to carpenters. Like a cabinet maker can build a back deck, but a carpenter can't lacquer and like engrave a fucking cabinet necessarily. That's a very specialized thing. I think, and the lady said that in this book in regards to acting, that there are actually thousands of realizable roles. She didn't really speak too much about comedy insofar as if that's more difficult, but I agree it is. But then again, there's also people, that get into comedy through acting. They get some comedic actor role, and then they start headlining them because their name will still sell tickets. So I'm a little torn with that one,
Well,
even if they're no fucking good.
Because most of those people just can't fill an hour. Like, there's just really not that many comedic actors that are touring comics because they cannot do it. Like, you just cannot fake it. Like, and as somebody who came from one of these disciplines to the other one, I mean, they're also so different. I mean, I see a lot of actors in LA will like try stand up at the Comedy Store one day and then never do it again because of the same thing we're talking about with the new comics. It's just like, you cannot fake it.
Like, oh, that was hard.
And most TV roles, especially roles for women, it's a lot of like looking hot and standing there. Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
Makes me want to go act. I need to go audition for something.
Yeah.
Because this whole time I thought it was hard.
The hard part, it's not that hard.
Yeah.
It's really not that hard. Especially if you do stand up, you can act.
Yeah.
Everybody who can do stand up's a lot harder than acting. And you just need, if you have like the right director and like I've helped comics with like auditions before and who've never acted, and you just tell them like 2 things and they're really good. You just give them like 2 quick notes and they're like, oh, okay. Because today is so much harder.
Yeah. I used to do little stuff back in the, like, gosh, 15 years ago almost. But like I was in a movie called A Prince Among Slaves, and it was a Bill Duke. Bill Duke was the director, and it was a documentary film, but it was narrated by Mos Def. And
cool.
yeah, so like I had like one speaking part in the movie, and it was a funny little I guess I'll tell y'all. So, so there was this scene where like I was the slave, and like the main character had just come to the plantation, right? So I spoke his native tongue because we came from the same like tribe or whatever, and so they told me to basically tell him what they wanted him to do, and so I just so Bill Duke comes over and he goes, how you doing, Bill Duke? And he's like 6'7",
Oh,
and,
really? Wow.
Yeah, Bill Duke is really tall. And he was like, so in this part of Africa, they would have spoken with a lot of like M words. They would have used a lot of M words. And, so he was like, just, see what you can do. So they're like, action. And I'm like, Mingwe, Mama Mingwe. And I just start talking like just made up. I just made it all up, right? So they're like, cut. They were like, that was excellent. They did one take, right? So, and I'm bullshitting the whole time, right? I'm just making it up. So I'm on my way back to the hotel, and there's like a shuttle to take me back to the hotel. So there were these 2 like hillbilly country guys who were like the horse wranglers for the scene, and they were like, "Hey man, what'd you say over there in that last scene? We just seen you. What'd you say over there?" And I was like, Mingwe, and I tried to recreate it. And they were like, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know. I just made it up. And they were like, oh, man, he just made it up. So they're like hitting each other. So I'm walking away and I'm about to get on the shuttle. And I hear one of them going, Ming Bao, boom, boom, boom. And he's like trying to do it. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I think I just like set like my race back like 50 years just now. Because these dudes were like, oh man, this is what they were so like, they loved it. They thought it was the coolest thing, but literally I made it up. And I was like, oh, is that what acting is? But it's like when I'm trying, I can't do it. But if I'm just like, yeah, I'm just going to make it up. Sometimes it works. So
that's right. That's right. Like that's what I learned in years of acting school is just like, when you just try less and like like having your lines for too long doesn't work. It gets too robotic. Like it's just sort of like try less and be some sort of like unpracticed version of yourself that it comes out really good. That's why a lot of actors are stupid because if you're not doing a lot of thinking, a lot of the time it comes out good. It's
you're just parroting stuff, huh?
Unless you're doing like, I feel like unless you're Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker and you're doing like roles like that requires like a lot of thinking. But like to get roles on that level, there's like, 3% of actors get that. I mean, most of it is just, it's easy. She said, as she didn't book an audition for. She's like,
it's easy.
It's easy.
Well, it's Meryl.
Yeah. Yeah. And she said, as she didn't book an audition for like 4 years now.
That's how it is with me in comedy too. Like, people be like, man, how do you do it? I'm like, oh man, it's like, man, what you do out there is crazy. I can never do that. It's brave. And I'm like, it ain't even that. It ain't even that hard. And then I go out and I'm like terrible for like 10 minutes. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do this.
Comedy's hard. I mean, comedy's hard. Like you can have the same comedy is like you can have the same set, and we've all been here before. You can do it back to back on the same night.
Yep.
The same, you do it the same way, and it can eat shit and crush in the same hour.
Yeah. Right. I went. Me and Mike Moran. We went to 3 mics one night, and like just different spots in Baltimore, and like First one, good. Second one, terrible. Third one, eh. And it was just like, and I was literally basically doing the same set. Like I would always try to do, like I said, a little something different, but for the most part, it was like my same go-to. Petey could probably repeat my act backwards and forwards, but it's just like, you don't know, different.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah. Like the last time I went to New York, I did 6 sets, and it was 2, 2, and 2. 2 were outstanding, and it was all sort of like the same. 2 were outstanding. 2 I said were like base hits, and 2 I ate shit. It's just like
yeah.
That's just the way it goes.
I feel like sometimes like it can be other things, but I feel like sometimes it's just like the energy that you bring into the performance, and whether or not that energy is gonna connect with the audience.
That's right.
Because it's not one of those things where you go, oh, the crowd sucked. It's like, well, they just didn't connect to what you were putting out there that time. Right. That's why I like hosting a lot, because I feel like my job is like, my primary role is to like increase the level of like the energy level in the room, and just allow the comics who are coming up behind me to like just feed off of that.
You take the first bullets.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that too, because like I made a decision to stop blaming the crowd if I do badly, probably like 2 years into comedy. I was like, the best comics change the room. Right.
That's wow. I've never heard it said like that. That's true. The best. Yeah.
The best comics, like, doesn't matter. It can be weird, but the best comics come in there and they totally change the energy. So you can never blame the crowd.
Nope. It's your job to figure out how to make that sea change. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got to go in like Moses, holding your nutsack and big scroll.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how it was written, but I mean, you're close. I think you're close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big nuts. Yeah. No, I mean, I've had those times when it's just like, and I would say that's one of the things that I didn't have when I started that I have a lot more of now, is that ability to read the room and go, okay, I'm gonna have to do this to get them, because they're not just gonna take my regular, hey guys, have you seen this on the news? Like I'm actually gonna have to like pull something out. But then when you do, the reward is so that much greater, because you're like, oh, I actually earned that. Like, because you can get on autopilot, and I've done it. Like, for a year I'm doing the same set. I'm just like, well, most of the people laugh when I do this, so I'll just do that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, nah, man, it's work, So, and that's the other reason that it's cool to have like a consistent like room, because now I'm forced to do different stuff every time.
Yeah.
And I only try to do like 5 minutes at the beginning, because it's always been one of my pet peeves, like when a host does like a half hour up front. But
hosts take note.
Yeah.
That's just me. Like I literally am like, hey, let me say a couple of funny things, and then be like, all right, y'all. It's like a fun facilitator, as much as it is a comic.
Oh yeah.
And I'll have people who don't really know comedy, and they'll be like, so I mean, are you ever gonna like do a set? And I'm like, well, I did, but like they go, so you're just hosting tonight? And I'm like, well, that also means that like I actually am doing material too. And they're like, oh, okay, well,
it's also a very important, difficult skill, you guys, hosting.
Yeah.
And important, I think, for all comics to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So Todd Fleming, you're hosting the most powerful room in Columbia, Maryland. You got us coming out to feature, headline, do our thing. What's next for you, my man? What are some goals? What's the next part of the journey?
So my goal now is to get back to being able to feature and because I took man, I took like a year and a half off at one point, and not even during the pandemic. Like I just wasn't going out. Mm-hmm. So I mean, now I'm just trying to be more deliberate about the way I put material together. Because I get lazy. Like I'll just, you know, and then really I'm trying to keep this room running, and then maybe start up one or two more in the area. Like either on the other Wednesday night that I don't do the one room. And so I have a couple of like places that I'm targeting. They don't know it yet, but I'm trying to come at them. And really just try to improve, man. Try to see what I can parlay it into, and you know, keep rolling.
Let the people know about what that room is that you have.
Yes. Yeah, so next Wednesday, so we do it every other Wednesday night. Next Wednesday, July 28th. Where is it? It's in Columbia, Maryland. It's 8808 Center Park Drive, Columbia, Maryland 21045. The show is $8 to get in. The next headliner I have is Andy Klein. So he's coming through, and I'm booked through like October at the moment. But of course, anytime y'all want to pop up, you can. But yeah, man. So we got these lineups. Periodic table.
It's a great show, you guys. If you haven't been, or if you're ever in that area, go. I just did it for the first time a couple weeks ago. It was so fun.
I appreciate it.
Check out the periodic table, you guys.
Yeah, and the owner is awesome over there. Like he's been really easy to work with. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I'm enjoying it. Crowds have been awesome. People keep coming through. So just gonna try to keep selling out as many shows as we can and keep the ball rolling, man. It's tough in the summer. Sometimes being the summer, it helps, and then sometimes it hurts. So, but as of right now, fingers crossed, things are going well. So
fantastic. Yeah. Well, where can people get at you, Todd?
So people can find me on Instagram. I'm Fox Fleming. You can also go to @Todd Fleming Comedy on Facebook. And then or you can just like show up in my neighborhood and yell, and I'll come outside. But
run the fade.
You guys can also see Todd on our show at Arlington Draft House on August 4th. We are having comics that you guys have heard on here before, some that you haven't, but we'll try to get them on. Either way, it's going to be a great show. 7:00, August 4th. Come see everybody on this podcast.
$10.
Me, Petey, and Todd do some performing, and it's never the same with me and Petey. If you've been before, Petey and I host together, and that's all straight out the dome. So there's nothing, you're going to see nothing that you saw at the last show you were at.
That's right.
That's dope. I'm looking forward to it. July 29th, I'll be in Pasadena, in the Dina. I forget the name of the place, so that's not great self-promotion, but
Pasadena, Maryland, huh?
Pasadena, Maryland. Yeah, I don't see it, so I'm not gonna take it.
I'm forgetting. I know I've done that room before.
Yeah, so we do. So I do a lot of shows at Shooters sometimes, but I feel like it's not at Shooters. I feel like it's at a different location. And like I said, I should know it. But I don't know it right now. But go to toddfleming.com. I'll post it on there. Or at Todd Fleming Comedy. I'm sorry, at Todd Fleming Comedy. Or I'll have it on my Instagram, Fox Fleming. So you can find it that way.
Fantastic.
Great.
Well, follow me and Elena, Steelborn DC, Elena Blondita on Instagram, Petey Steele, Elena Torres on Facebook, and Counter Currents DC on Instagram. And we'll have all kinds of updates and keep the party going.
Yeah, we want to thank Todd for doing this with us today.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for having me. That was quite an honor.
Thanks for doing it. And
our pleasure.
Take care of yourselves, everybody.
All right, y'all.
All right, guys.
Peace.
Bye.
Peace.